Fans, I'm your host, Russ Fritz, and let me tell you, if you thought the Double Down duels were wild, you haven't seen anything yet. We've got so much to unpack from the world of sprint car racing, from shocking departures to brutal crashes, and of course, a new king crowned at Eldora. Strap in tight, because this isn't just racing, this is switching grooves. Nathan Johns is off tonight after getting married yesterday, so let's send our biggest congratulations to him and his new wife, Ashley. My congratulations go out to my co host and close friends, Mr. and Mrs. Johns. Congratulations. All right, let's kick things off with some absolutely massive news that hit the sprint car world like a ton of bricks. If you missed it, following Wednesday's Joker's Jackpot prelim night, Gio Scelzi, in a move that sent shockwaves through the pits, very abruptly announced his departure from the KCP Racing sprint car team. Now, this wasn't just a quiet parting of ways. Gio had a hard crash out of the night's first feature, and apparently that was the final straw for him. He took to social media, sharing with everyone that he had decided to part ways with the team immediately. Just like that, it was over. Now, let's put this into perspective. This wasn't just any driver and any team. Going back to 2020, Gio and KCP Racing had an incredible run together, racking up 18 total wins. 8 of those were with the World of Outlaws, and they achieved the best World of Outlaws championship result, a fantastic fourth place finish in 2023. You know, even though they finished a bit worse in the standings in 2024, that season was still another clear step forward for them. They grabbed 4 wins, boasted better top 5 and top 10 percentages, and saw a nearly 1.5 position improvement in their average finish. They were on an upward trajectory. But then the offseason hit, and KCP faced some crew member turnovers. And this year, well, that car just hasn't been on point. We've seen just a single outlaw win and a more than 2 position decline in their average finish. They've only managed 3 podium finishes so far this season, and Gio hasn't even been on an outlaw podium since March 15th. Now, let me be clear. This is not a bad team by any means at all. They are a consistent top 10 finisher, absolutely. But they just haven't had that blazing speed to truly contend with the likes of David Gravel, Buddy Kofoid, and Carson Macedo at the front. What's really interesting here is the nature of the split. Gio shared with Jeremy Elliott that he wasn't just having fun anymore. And you know what? He's still super tight with the crew and the team general manager, Matt Barbara. This was about as amicable a split as you could possibly get in racing. The team didn't fire Gio after the crash, and they weren't even looking to make a change. Gio told Jeremy he was headed to the track to get his merch trailer, and then he was heading straight to his house in Iowa to rest a sore wrist after that crash and to figure out what was next for him. This whole situation has had us all wondering when sprint car silly season would really start, because crazy things usually seem to happen around King's Royal weekend and the Knoxville Nationals. And when you know it, right on schedule, here we are. Already, several drivers have reached out to the KCP team to inquire about that now open seat. But right now, there's no indication of what direction KCP might go. With a winning ride suddenly open, though, I'm absolutely sure Matt Barbara's phone is ringing off the hook, with plenty of drivers looking to fill that seat. There's certainly nobody of Gio's caliber out there without a ride, so if they're able to replace him with another top driver, it would have to be somebody already with a team. Well, Gio's future, that seems to be completely up in the air just as much. What a development. So I just can't believe it still. But speaking of Eldora, let's talk about Thursday night at the Big E. Well, it was, to put it mildly, again, a messy program with a lot of torn up equipment. The night did end up running long, well over the initial 2 hour time window for Fox Sports 1, but despite the fact, the network did extend its coverage to allow for the time overrun, and fans at home were able to see the entire show live. It was a clear illustration, though, of the immense challenges in place for dirt racing to be on live TV regularly. It's just really difficult to make such dynamic, unpredictable events fit nicely into clear defined time blocks. The ugliest moments of the night, and it was truly ugly, was the opening lap crash in the feature that involved Tyler Courtney, Buddy Kofoid, Brad Sweet, and several others. Oh, it was insane. I can still see it. But all the drivers except Tyler Courtney were able to get out of their cars under their own power, which was a relief. But Courtney did need assistance after it looked like his car got into a catch fence cage first. He was communicating with safety workers afterwards, and he was transported to a local hospital for further checks. Late Thursday night, the Clausen Marshall team shared that Sunshine, Tyler Courtney, was alert and able to move all of his extremities. And remember, this is the same event where Courtney was injured just a few years ago and ended up sitting out for an extended amount of time with a back injury. It just hasn't been a good week for sprint car racing when it comes to keeping drivers' safety, health, and equipment intact. There were plenty of other incidents and cautions through the rest of the feature, including a fuel stop, and we even saw Logan Schuchart go for a wild ride coming to the checkered. With a national television audience from FS1 watching, Thursday's Joker's Jackpot certainly saw plenty of theatrics with Kubota High Limit Racing and Eldora Speedway. So, man, it was just wild. I can't believe this whole week. It was crazy. Excuse me. Now, let's get into the details of that 100,000 to win 40 lap main event. It opened with a bang and in a scary way, as that severe multi-car pileup tore up contenders including Buddy Kofoid, Tyler Courtney, Bill Balog, Brad Sweet, Hunter Schoenberg, and Brady Bacon. Just a brutal start after an extensive cleanup, though. The race finally resumed with Rico Abreu controlling the 20 laps, uh, the opening 20 laps over Kyle Larson and Logan Schuchart, as that lead trio danced through lap traffic and against the treacherous wall at the Big E. The winning move of the race, the one that decided it all, came after the halfway point when Larson and Abreu swapped sliders back and forth, with the deciding moment coming when Larson's 57 was barely, by what seems inches, able to squeeze between Abreu's 24 and the outside wall to secure the lead for good. What a move. It wasn't the final challenge for the top spot, as Schuchart, Carson Macedo, and Anthony Macri entered the picture to make it a five-way battle for that six-figure payday. More drama unfolded in the final stages, however, as Schuchart suffered a flat left rear, and then Macedo encountered a flat left front after contact with Larson on a critical restart. Just when you thought it couldn't get any crazier. After all that, Larson cruised down the final stretch and crossed the line with a 2.254-second margin of victory over Anthony Macri. The $100,000 Joker's Jackpot title marked his 10th career win in Eldora Speedway and his 9th career win with Kubota High Limit Racing. What a performance. Congratulations, Kyle. Dillsburg, Pennsylvania's own Anthony Macri was all smiles after a fantastic $25,000 runner-up effort, especially after starting way back in 11th. Early leader Rico Abreu rounded out the podium for a $15,000 payday in his iconic Whiskey Myers East Texas Hot Rod. Closing out the top 10 were Aaron Reitzel, Corey Day, Sheldon Hollenshield, Garrett Williamson, Brian Brown, Logan Schuchart, and Brock Zierfoss. At the end of it all, It was Kyle Larson picking up that massive $100,000 check, though. After taking control from Rico Abreu after halfway, Larson went the distance from there, and it was his first Kubota high limit since March. Victory since March, excuse me. He has had other wins since then, though, with the Outlaws and during Pennsylvania Speed Week. Anthony Macri with a very solid 11th to second charge, and Rico ended up third after leading the opening 21 laps. Well, who could ask for anything better? Now, for some of the higher profile drivers who ended up missing the Joker's Jackpot main event, the list is who's who. Justin Peck, Christopher Bell, Spencer Baston, Donnie Schatz, Brett Marks, Kerry Madsen, Ryan Timms, and David Gravel. And speaking of Gravel, well, he was disqualified from his double down duel second place finish for a nose wing violation, and he was in position to transfer into the main event during the first B main, but wound up blowing a tire and went for a wild ride. None of that seemed to slow Gravel down, nor his team, going into the King's Royal, though. Now, let's switch grooves to the King's Royal and start off the King's Royal recap. First, with Rico Abreu earning a trip to victory lane for the second year in a row by winning the main event during Eldora's night before the King's Royal with the World of Outlaws. Unlike last year when Abreu had to run down David Gravel to regain the lead with 4 laps to go, Abreu led all 30 laps en route to victory in dominating fashion. He was just gone. Afterwards, Abreu was greeted to the Eldora crowd chanting his name during his victory lane interview. You could feel the energy. And Rico, ever the showman, said to the crowd's pleasure, "All you fans are what make this sport so exciting. I drive my ass off for you guys. I just really appreciate these events and the build up to them. It gets really intense out there. You're racing against the greatest drivers of all time. Kyle Larson, David Gravel, Brad Sweet, Carson Macedo. They're the fastest cars in the country right now. You got to love that passion." Well, Rigo, we all do love that passion. After the initial start was called back for a jump by Parker Price Miller, who was actually docked 2 starting positions for the infraction, Abreu drove to the lead with David Gravel and Aaron Reisel in hot pursuit. Abreu began overtaking slower cars on lap 5, which allowed Gravel to close in. And 1 lap later, the caution flag appeared when Corey Day slowed in turn 4. Day was unable to make repairs to rejoin the field and got stuck in the infield. While Abreu continued to lead, Gravel and Reitzel, Kyle Larson made his presence felt, passing Zach Hampton for 4th. And 1 lap later, the first red flag of the race appeared when Casey Kane slammed the wall between turns 1 and 2 and flipped violently down the racetrack. But thankfully, Kane was able to exit the car under his own power. After the restart, Larson and Reitzel started racing for 3rd position, with Larson taking the spot. With 18 laps complete, a caution flag for Ashton Torgerson allowed Reitzel to get a tremendous restart to drive into 2nd position. But he could just not get by Abreu for the lead, just everything he threw at him. And then just after securing that 2nd position, disaster struck for Reitzel as he flipped into the catch fence between turns 1 and 2. That turn was bad all week. After landing on the track, Hampton and Steven Snyder Jr. had nowhere to go and slammed into Reitzel's car, and all 3 drivers emerged from their race cars under their own power. But Reitzel immediately went down to the ground and was tended to by medical personnel. It was just a brutal sequence. Really terrible crash. After that restart, Abreu pulled away while Carson Macedo and Larson shuffled Gravel back to 4th, and Gravel was able to get back to 3rd around Larson on lap 18. Up front, it was still all Abreu, holding a 1.381 second advantage at the finish line. Macedo held on for 2nd, while Larson and Gravel continued to race for 3rd, with Larson taking the position on the final lap. Yeah, we'll get into that later. Never mind. I won't go into it now. But yeah, actually, I will get into it now. Let's move on. But and then the drama actually continued after the checkered, though. Larson and Gravel collided on the backstretch with both cars stopped on the track. The pair continued to verbally spar and were taken back to the World of Outlaws command center by official Carlton Reamers before both drivers went their separate ways. So the two drivers went at it for the third and final podium spot, with Larson eventually coming out on top at the checkers. So, and that was actually a last corner slider. Gravel clearly didn't like the way he got raced and decided to show his displeasure to Larson after the race was over by spinning him out, going through turns 1 and 2 right after taking the checkers. So, I'm sorry, but David Gravel, I'm calling you out here. You want to say that Kyle's not racing professionally? Well, what was so professional about spinning him out when cars are still slowing down from over 130 mile an hour? What was so safe about that? Okay. I support all you guys. I do have a couple of favorites, yes, but I support all you guys. You guys are some of the greatest drivers in the country, maybe even the world. And you know better than that. That was not safe and that was not professional. I mean, either way. But like I said, there was some swerving, some shenanigans, and Larson eventually ended up turned around on the backstretch. But I don't know that I fully believe Gravel intended to turn the 57 around, but it seems like it's what he was trying to do. But there would certainly be justification there if Outlaws decided to penalize David Gravel. We've seen post-race dust-ups like this go both ways, where drivers were penalized and times where they weren't. But there probably won't be any lack of outrage if Gravel isn't penalized. All the Gravel haters out there. It was a frustrating week for David Gravel though, with the high limit DQ and then the B main crash, and it seemed that his frustrations finally just boiled over. Afterwards, Larson chalked it all up to hard racing, but Gravel said this has been brewing for a while. He said it goes back to Huset's, and he clearly thinks that there is bad blood between the two sides given the high limit / outlaw stuff, the penalty last week, and the history of Cody Jacobs' comments. And rumor has it that in the pit area, there was even a confrontation between Jacobs and Paul Silva, the crew chiefs of each car. Larson makes some big moves in a sprint car. It's honestly what makes him so incredible to watch, and that he's willing and able to pull those types of passes off makes it that much more exciting. But it is surprising that it's taken this long for someone to lose their cool with Larson over a pass. I certainly don't blame David Gravel for being upset over some short sliders, but I don't think that Larson owes Gravel anything because of the championship or the fact that Larson doesn't drive a sprint car full time. What is he supposed to just let you pass, David, because you do it full time? He's just supposed to pull over and let you pass? No, I'm sorry, that's not the case. You're all there to win, and you're all going to do what you got to do to win. But Gravel made a comment about Larson running third or fourth doesn't change his life, and that's 1,000% true. But it's also true for Gravel. Just as Gravel may have expected Larson to yield, Gravel could have done the same. Back out, run fourth, and don't take the risk. Whether battling for a win, battling for fifth, or whatever, these guys are competitors, and they want every inch. To see the best go wheel to wheel is why we watch, not to see one guy back out and be Mr. Nice Guy. That's the beauty of it all. And now, the moment we've all been waiting for. Anthony Macri becoming King Anthony the 42nd last night at Eldora Speedway. What a massive $200,000 win and a marquee accomplishment in his young career. He'd already won the Weichert Memorial and the Tuscarora 50 at Port Royal. But to win a crown jewel like this at Eldora is a significant statement for him and that entire team. Most of the hardcore sprint car fans out there know that Macri is more than just a driver that can win in Pennsylvania, but this will no doubt silence any of the porch talk around the Concrete Kid. He took the lead immediately at the start from pole sitter Casey Jetterzek. Remember, let me point that out to everybody. I have talked to Casey dozens of times. It's just Jed-er-zek. Plain and simple. You don't have to get all fancy with it. It's Jed-er-zek. So all you announcers out there, remember that. I guess it's just a pet peeve of mine. But after Macri took the lead immediately from Casey Jetterzek, he had no problem down the stretch keeping Rico Abreu and Kyle Larson at bay. What's even more crazy is it was just 2 years ago that Macri walked away from his family team at this exact weekend. And we know it was several months before things actually got worked out and he returned. We were stunned back then over the departure. And now here we are just 2 years later with Macri wearing the crown. The rest of the top 10 included Brian Brown, David Gravel, who made an incredible charge from 19th to 5th, Ryan Smith, Carson Macedo, Logan Schuchart, Ashton Torgerson, and Danny Dietrich. I'm sure the party for the Macri bunch went well into the morning hours, and it might not even be over and continue today. With all that said, I don't know how you guys feel, but I am so glad these 4 days of racing at Eldora are over. It was a brutal week for crashes, and I think lots of folks held their breath through a lot of the on-track action. Tyler Courtney needed surgery after his crash over the other night and is likely looking at an extended absence from sprint car racing. Aaron Reisel's incident was one of the most frightening I've seen in a long time. Those extra hits from Zach Hampton and Steven Snyder Jr. were awful to watch. Reisel suffered a fractured right foot, and I'd guess he'll be missing time as well. And last night, it was Brad Sweet taking a nasty hit from Cale Thomas after going for a tumble in turns 1 and 2 again, just like the rest of them. Sweet also took a trip to the hospital, but was actually discharged overnight with all scans coming back clear. He shared to social media that he's sore and beat up. I don't know if something has to change about the racing or the track, or if it was just a bad luck week at Eldora. But none of these last 4 days were really fun to watch. After the Caleb Henry crash at Attica earlier this week, I said there are times that I really don't like sprint car racing, and those feelings continued through last night. The speed and the ferocity of racing and the fearlessness of drivers, well, are all what actually draws us to the sport. But those things can also lead to terrible consequences. These last 4 days will have a negative long-term effect on the drivers, their families, and friends, and racing itself. The fallout and the ripple effects won't be fully known or understood for quite a while. But let's not forget the triumph. Anthony Macri gave the Pennsylvania Posse sprint car fans something truly special to cheer about Saturday night at Eldora by winning the 42nd Kings Royal with the World of Outlaws. Congratulations, Macri. It was a hell of a drive. Great job, man. So again, he earned the outside front row starting position for the feature event and led all 40 laps en route to the crown. And that incredible $200,000 top prize goes with it. I can't imagine how he's feeling. But even though Anthony Macri led the entire distance, it was far from easy having to hold off Rico Abreu and Kyle Larson during the closing stages of the feature event. Afterwards, Macri was emotional in victory lane, thinking about the beginning of his career and now standing in one of the biggest stages in the sport as a Kings Royal winner. He said, "This is honestly special to be able to start where we started, and you know that what that means to my parents and everyone that put all the time and effort into this thing never did. Never did I think in a million years that I would be standing up here and winning a crown jewel that's worth $200,000. But this is badass." You could just feel the emotion in that. Macri even had to fight a bent Jacobs ladder that was suffered during the main event while having to fend off Abreu and Larson through slower traffic. Rico Abreu, who finished second, said in victory lane, "I actually kind of I actually kind of tightened us up there and in clean air and just stuck the car a little bit better. In dirty air, it definitely made the car a little bit of a handful. I knew Rico and Larson were behind me, and I still had to run the shit out of this thing and not mess up. Abreu slowly picked his way through the field up to the runner-up spot, but was never able to seriously challenge Macri for the lead and had to settle for second. Larson, Brian Brown, and David Gravel rounded out the top five. So the king has been crowned, and people are starting their journeys home from Eldora Speedway after the 42nd Kings Royal. Here are my key takeaways from one of the biggest sprint car events in history. Leading into the Kings Royal and throughout the event, a lot of the discussion was centered around how drivers would fare from the World of Outlaws and High Limit Sprint Car Series going into one of the sprint car racing crown jewel events. But when Saturday's finale for the Kings Royal came around, it ended up being stars from the outside, those two organizations that stole most of the spotlight. It seemed fitting on a night where 1986 Kings Royal winner Don Kreitz Jr. was honored as the sovereign king that crowns the winner of the event, that another Pennsylvania driver would take home the top prize. The PA posse ran wild Saturday at Eldora, uh, to the delight of their passionate fan base. And from Ryan Smith's incredible run around the bottom and in the Don Kreitz 69K to Danny Dietrich winning his heat race and Macri securing the outside front row starting position by winning the fifth heat race, they made sure the posse was going to leave their mark on the 2025 Kings Royal. Even the Midwest and Great Lakes region stole some of the thunder, with Brian Brown winning his heat race and turning a strong top five performance. Um, oh man, my notes just shut up. So, but yeah, it was awesome. I just couldn't believe it. To see Reitzel win by that much, I mean, I just couldn't believe it. It was awesome. But uh, um, yeah, sorry, I'm pulling up my notes back here again. Everything just shut off. So, but no, Macri was awesome. I mean, it didn't even blink. That bent Jacobs ladder didn't phase him whatsoever. And my gosh, I don't know what to say about it. So, but I'll be back in 1 second. Once I get this figured out, I actually have to turn the camera off so I can figure out what's going on with my computer. Okay, got it figured out. Just one screen popped over the other, and it was crazy. But going back, uh, Even the Midwest and Great Lakes region stole some of the thunder, with Brian Brown winning his heat race and turning in a strong top 5 performance. And while the 19-year-old Casey Jeterzek shocked the sprint car world in the 6th heat, using the bottom of the racetrack to perfection to win the heat and earn the pole position for the main event. What a story. As the night wore on, the spotlight focused squarely on Macri, who made the 40-lap Kings Royal look like another Saturday night at Port Royal Speedway, rim riding the high banks of Eldora Speedway with the greatest of ease, holding off 2 of the best sprint car drivers on the planet in the process, Rico Abreu and Kyle Larson. Soft-spoken and reserved outside the race car, but an absolute force behind the wheel, it was easy to see what the win meant to Macri, showing as much emotion as I've ever seen out of him at all. The first time I met Macri in 2021, he was driving for Bernie Steuben at Eldora. My first interaction with him left me wondering how this was the same kid that ripped fearlessly around Port Royal every week. Macri has shown a lot of growth since then. From the scrutiny of the short separation from his family team, filling in for Tyler Courtney under a bright spotlight, and eventually putting that entry into the final for the Knoxville Nationals, and then returning to the family operation and taking it on the road more frequently to better themselves. It's been fun to watch the journey of Anthony Macri, and the sentiment is shared by others, as both Rico Abreu and Kyle Larson seem to sincerely be happy for Macri's success on Saturday. The best part is, at just 26 years of age, Macri is still far from his peak potential. The future for him is looking bright. There was a time when the World of Outlaws drivers would often just dominate an event like this, but we are starting to see more often, though, drivers from the outside and outside the national touring series be able to be able to become legitimate contenders for those major event victories. It's fantastic for the sport. And now, with all the violent crashes throughout the week being the main discussion point about the Kings Royal weekend at Eldora Speedway, I have to give a huge shout out to the track staffs. From Attica to Fremont to Eldora, they dialed up a tremendous racing surface for the finale on Saturday, and the safety crews were right on point. Even a rain shower that hit mid-afternoon at Eldora could not derail the best night of racing out of the 4. Eldora track staff rolled the surface tightly in anticipation of rain and ended up producing a wide racing surface where drivers could use the top and the bottom most of the evening. While there was still a serious incident involving Brad Sweet, which we talked about earlier, the night was more of a typical Eldora Speedway action night, with all 6 heat races being highly entertaining and the B main having a lot of action, with comers and goers throughout the entire race. Even the depression in the surface going into turn 1 was not as much of a factor with the harder racing on a racing surface on Saturday. Hopefully, this is the kind of surface Eldora can continue to dial up for the next Kings Royal. And finally, after the completion of the 4 nights of racing in Eldora Speedway, the High Limit Sprint Car Series saw their top 3 in points all have to take trips to the hospital during the event. Brad Sweet, Aaron Reisel, and Tyler Courtney. We can assume both Courtney and Reisel, again, are potentially going to be out of action for a while. While the High Limit Racing Series has almost a month off coming up soon, they do have an event on Tuesday at Lernerville Speedway that has implications for not only the overall championship, but also the midweek money series. This could open up the door for Rico Abreu, Brent Marks, Justin Peck, or another one of the High Limit drivers to take a run at the Drivers' Point Championship. It also brings speculations on who may fill in for Reitzel and Courtney in the short term. There will be a lot of attention on Tuesday's event to see how all this plays out for that night and for the rest of 2025. But that's going to wrap it up for this episode. But remember, we bring you insane motorsports moments, breakdowns, and adrenaline-packed edits every single week. Whether you live for those sideways mudslinging dirt sliders or the rubber-throwing paint-trading speed of NASCAR, you belong here. Hit that subscribe button now so you never miss a finish. And until next time, I'm Russ Fritz saying race hard, race safe, and we'll see you there. Good night.